In the final winter of the war, a desperate gamble was conceived in the highest echelons of the German command. Adolf Hitler, refusing to acknowledge the inevitability of defeat, planned one last monumental offensive on the Western Front. He codenamed this audacious plan Wacht am Rhein, or Watch on the Rhine, a name meant to evoke defensive vigilance while masking its true aggressive intent. The objective was staggeringly ambitious: to punch through the Allied lines, cross the Meuse River, and recapture the vital port of Antwerp. By splitting the American and British forces, Hitler hoped to force a negotiated peace, shattering the Allied coalition. The chosen location for this massive assault was the Ardennes Forest, a rugged, densely wooded region in Belgium and Luxembourg. Allied intelligence considered the Ardennes a quiet sector, a place unsuitable for a major armored offensive, especially in winter. This assumption of inactivity would prove to be a catastrophic miscalculation. Germany secretly amassed 3 powerful armies, marshalling its last reserves of manpower and panzer divisions. Soldiers were stripped from the Eastern Front, and new, young recruits were hastily trained for the coming battle. A critical element of the plan was absolute secrecy and the element of surprise. Another crucial factor was the weather. The offensive was timed to coincide with a period of heavy cloud cover, fog, and snow. This meteorological cloak would ground the Allies' overwhelmingly superior air forces, leaving their ground troops vulnerable. In the pre-dawn hours of December 16, 1944, the silence of the Ardennes was shattered. A massive German artillery barrage, involving thousands of guns, erupted along an 85-mile front. The bombardment stunned the thinly spread American divisions stationed in the sector. Following the barrage, waves of German infantry and armor surged forward through the snow and mist. The surprise was complete. American units were initially overwhelmed, their communications severed. German spearheads exploited the gaps, pushing deep into the American lines. This rapid advance created the famous Bulge in the Allied front that gave the battle its name. One of the most infamous events of the battle occurred on the second day, near the town of Malmedy. An SS unit under the command of Joachim Peiper captured and then murdered over 80 unarmed American prisoners of war. News of the Malmedy massacre spread rapidly among Allied troops, steeling their resolve to fight to the death. Small pockets of American soldiers, despite being cut off, fought with incredible tenacity. Their stubborn defense of key roads, bridges, and villages critically delayed the German timetable. The strategic town of St. Vith became a focal point of this fierce resistance. Even more crucial was the crossroads town of Bastogne, a vital hub for the movement of troops and supplies. By December 20th, German forces had completely encircled Bastogne, trapping the elite 101st Airborne Division. The Screaming Eagles were low on ammunition, food, medical supplies, and winter clothing. German commanders sent a formal request for the Americans to surrender the town. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, the acting commander of the 101st, gave a now legendary one-word reply. His official response, delivered to the Germans, was simply, nuts. The reply baffled the German officers, but its meaning was clear to the American defenders. They would not surrender. While Bastogne held out, the Allied High Command was racing to respond to the crisis. General George S. Patton Jr. was ordered to disengage his Third Army and pivot 90 degrees to the north. It was a monumental logistical feat, moving thousands of soldiers and vehicles in the dead of winter. Patton promised he could attack within 48 hours, a claim his peers thought impossible. The weather finally began to break around December 23rd, the dense fog and clouds starting to dissipate. The Bulge had reached its furthest point, with German panzers just a few miles from the Meuse River, but critically low on fuel. The clearing skies were a godsend for the Allies and a death knell for the German offensive. Allied air power, the WWII fighter bombers, was unleashed upon the exposed German columns. C-47 transport planes began airdropping desperately needed supplies to the defenders of Bastogne. On the ground, Patton's Third Army relentlessly pushed north, battling through fierce German resistance. The fighting was brutal, taking place in frozen forests and shattered villages. The cold was as much an enemy as the Germans, with frostbite taking a heavy toll on both sides. On December 26th, the lead elements of Patton's 4th Armored Division finally broke through and relieved Bastogne. The siege was broken, but the battle was far from over. The Germans, though their offensive was blunted, fought desperately to hold their gains and withdraw in good order. In a final, desperate act, the Luftwaffe launched Operation Bodenplatte on New Year's Day, 1945. It was a massive, surprise attack on Allied airfields in a bid to regain air superiority. While the raid destroyed many Allied planes on the ground, the Luftwaffe suffered irreplaceable losses in pilots and aircraft. Throughout early January, American forces from the north and south squeezed the Bulge, aiming to trap the German armies. Hitler finally conceded failure and authorized a full withdrawal on January 7, 1945. By January 25th, 1945, the battle was officially over, with the front lines restored to their pre-offensive positions. The Battle of the Bulge was the largest and bloodiest single battle fought by the United States in World War II. American casualties were staggering, with over 19,000 killed and tens of thousands more wounded or captured. For Germany, the offensive was a complete strategic disaster. It had expended the last of its elite armored reserves and precious fuel, resources it could not replace. The battle had delayed the final Allied push into Germany, but it had also fatally weakened the Wehrmacht. The heroism of the American soldiers who held the line against overwhelming odds became legendary. The battle demonstrated the resilience and fighting spirit of the American GI. It also highlighted the critical importance of logistics, air power, and leadership in modern warfare. The Ardennes forest, once a scene of carnage, slowly returned to its winter silence. The ghosts of the battle would linger in the woods and villages for decades to come. The failure of Hitler's last gamble hastened the end of the war in Europe. The front lines were re-established, but the human cost was immense. The German soldiers were a mix of hardened veterans and young, inexperienced boys. They were equipped with some of the most formidable tanks of the war, like the Tiger II. However, these powerful machines were fuel guzzlers, a critical vulnerability. The American defenders were often armed with inferior anti-tank weapons. M4 Sherman tank was no match for a Panther or Tiger in a head-on engagement. American tankers had to rely on superior numbers and flanking maneuvers to succeed. The initial German breakthrough caused panic and confusion in the Allied rear echelons. English-speaking German commandos, led by Otto Skorzeny, operated behind American lines. These commandos spread disinformation and switched road signs to increase the chaos. This psychological warfare, while not decisive, added to the initial American disorientation. The defense of Bastogne became a powerful symbol of American grit. Inside the pocket, surgeons operated in freezing, poorly lit cellars. The wounded suffered terribly from the cold and lack of plasma. Civilians in the Ardennes were caught in the crossfire of this brutal battle. Many Belgian towns and villages were completely destroyed in the fighting. The landscape itself was scarred, with forests shattered by artillery fire. The sound of battle was a constant, deafening roar of explosions and machine gun fire. At night, The darkness was punctuated by the bright flashes of artillery and burning vehicles. Soldiers dug foxholes in the frozen ground, a Herculean task. These offered the only protection from the constant shelling. Hot food was a rare luxury. Most meals consisted of cold K rations. Keeping weapons clean and functional in the snow and mud was a constant struggle. The German Volksgrenadier divisions were composed of men previously considered unfit for service. Their fighting spirit, however, was often surprisingly high, fueled by propaganda. The battle saw some of the most intense tank-on-tank combat of the war. The narrow, winding roads of the Ardennes were ill-suited for large armored formations. This often channeled the fighting into predictable, deadly choke points. The relief of Bastogne was a major turning point, both tactically and for morale. Patton's famous prayer for good weather seemed to have been answered. Once the skies cleared, Allied fighter bombers became the masters of the battlefield. They hunted German armor supply lines with ruthless efficiency. The German retreat was a grueling affair, harassed constantly from the air and by advancing Allied ground troops. They were forced to abandon hundreds of tanks and vehicles due to lack of fuel or mechanical failure. The battle ultimately shortened the war by depleting Germany's ability to defend its own borders. The experience forged a generation of American veterans. The silence that fell over the Ardennes in late January was profound. The snow-covered ground was a temporary shroud for the evidence of the fierce struggle. The strategic surprise achieved by the Germans was a massive intelligence failure for the Allies. Overconfidence and dismissive attitudes towards German capabilities played a significant role. The battle forced a rapid and humbling reassessment of the enemy. Sheer ferocity of the German assault was unexpected. American soldiers had to adapt quickly from a mindset of pursuit to one of desperate defense. The bonds forged between soldiers in the foxholes were unbreakable. Acts of individual heroism were commonplace, though most went unrecorded. Medics performed miracles under the most horrific conditions. The logistical chain, though initially shattered, proved remarkably resilient. The Red Ball Express, a famed truck convoy system, was redirected to the Ardennes front. African-American soldiers, serving in segregated units, played a vital role in this supply effort. For the first time, some African-American soldiers were allowed to serve in integrated combat units. The battle raged not just on the ground, but in the minds of the commanders. Field Marshal Montgomery took command of the northern shoulder of the Bulge, a controversial decision. His cautious, methodical approach contrasted with Patton's aggressive, fast-paced style. Eventual link-up of the 1st and 3rd Armies at Houffalize sealed the fate of the German salient. The battle left behind a legacy of courage, sacrifice, and the grim reality of war. The Ardennes campaign was a brutal but necessary chapter in the final victory. The offensive began with a deceptive quiet, a calm before the storm. Many American troops were new replacements, seeing combat for the first time. The German artillery was expertly coordinated, creating a rolling wall of fire. The psychological shock of the attack was as potent as the physical destruction. The King Tiger tank, with its thick armor, seemed almost invincible. The German soldiers advanced with a speed that surprised even their own commanders. The defense of small, unnamed hills often decided the fate of entire sectors. The battle became a soldier's fight, decided by small unit actions. The siege of Bastogne lasted for nearly a week of constant pressure. Patton's relief column was a race against time and the elements. The moment the first German tank from the 4th Armored Division entered Bastogne was euphoric. The German High Command realized the offensive had failed when Bastogne was relieved. The fighting in January was a slow, grinding affair to push the Germans back. The cost in frozen limbs was nearly as high as the cost in battle casualties. The battle consumed the last of the Luftwaffe's experienced fighter pilots. The final victory in the Ardennes opened the door to the heartland of Germany.